Policy. I think some of you would have joined us yesterday as well. We began the celebrations with a Foundation Day lecture by Dr. P.K. Mishra, who is with the Prime Minister's office, and we were able to kind of have that lecture yesterday, but the actual Foundation Day is on July 10th. 2000 is when the Center for Public Policy was formed effectively, and therefore today is the real Foundation Day. And in some sense, it's only befitting that we have a lot of people who have been associated with the center right from its inception, and in fact, even before it was formed, as well as after its formation and its growth and evolution today with us. Before I kind of introduce you to all of them, I would like to also mention that, yesterday it was mentioned, but just to kind of reiterate, CPP's simple objective, in fact, I found that written up in one of our formative documents, is to create public policy capacity in the country. And that was the very succinct and simple objective that CPP is living up to, or striving its best in order to live up to as such. In some sense, also to influence the policy discourse, to influence development outcomes, especially through evidence-based policy research, capacity building activities, and collaborative outreach to all relevant stakeholders. While all of these are elements and features, but the simple objective is to build public policy capacity. And that is in what manner, how do we do it, how do we design, what's the future, is what this panel is all about. This panel is titled CPP Experience in Public Policy Research and Education. And the idea is to bring together all the past chairpersons of the Center for Public Policy, and including our current chairperson, Professor Gopal Naik, who is online. So I will begin by, in the chronological order, from July 2000 to 2003, we had Professor Charanjit Singh, who was the first chairperson, and I welcome you, sir, for this panel, and thank you for joining us. And the next chairperson happens to be very closely associated, Professor Charanjit Singh's spouse as well, is Professor Geeta Sen. She has joined us online. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. And she held the position from 2003 to 2006. And then we had Professor Gopal Naik from 2006 to 2009. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us online. Joining us from beyond India, so I think it's very early morning for you over there. So thank you. And thereafter, from 2009 to 2013, we had Professor Rajiv Gowda. Thank you for joining us, sir. And Professor Rajiv Gowda was also is currently, can I say, a practicing politician and with the Congress Party, but more importantly, he had a wonderful academic career, and he was the chair from 2009 to 2013. Thereafter, we had Professor G. Ramesh, who could not join us today, but from 2013 to 2015. And then we had Professor Arnab Mukherjee, that was from 2015 to 2018. And then we had Professor Emma Swaminathan, who is also not able to join us today, but she was the chair from 2018 to 2020. And then we had Professor M.S. Sriram, who is also with us today. And then he held the position from 2020 to 2023. And currently we have Professor Gopal Naik, who's holding the position of the chairperson. Center for Public Policy, and I'm sure I should not be the person. I'm Anil Suraj. I work with Center for Public Policy, and I would be posing some questions in addition to having to kind of get their remarks on the entire aspect of CPP experience. But just to mention to you, we not only formed Center for Public Policy, but we also started, perhaps, can I say, the first formal public policy educational program, the postgraduate program in public policy and management. And it began as a 2-year program with 1 year full-time activity on campus and a 1-year field kind of experience and research, and they come back and submit a thesis and things like that. Over the years, well, a lot of pressures, pulls, and pushes. It has now evolved into a more hybrid version of the program, which maybe Arnab, you can speak about it when you mention. So, in a sense, Center for Public Policy has also been in parallel with the postgraduate program on public policy and management as well. So, friends, without further ado, maybe we'll follow the chronological order. So, I would like to request each of the panelists and chairs to maybe take 10-12 minutes as opening remarks. And then there are a few questions, which in fact, some of them even wrote to us asking their expectations from the panel, which I will pose subsequent rounds. We have a few people who have joined online by invite, and I don't know, are we streaming live also, Shikala? But no, this is not being streamed live, so we can be even more frank about that. Sorry, we are being streamed live. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so we are going to be also be streaming live on YouTube, this thing as well. All right. So yes, we still can be frank. I guess that's the. All right. So I'll begin. I'll request Professor Chiranjeev Sen to begin. You can be seated or.
No, I'm fine. I would like to have had a lectern, but
okay.
Doesn't matter. I can lean over and doesn't matter. Don't worry. Thanks, Anil. Dear friends, it's a great delight for me to be part of this occasion. I feel very honored to be with you. And it's hard to believe that 25 years have gone by since the day we signed the founding of the CPP. Well, life goes on and many things change, but it's wonderful to know that the CPP has continued to flourish, has been part of the IIM, and is continued to contribute to its mission. I wanted to say briefly a few things. Today is an occasion for celebration. We are very happy, but I wanted to mention the names of a few, or at least acknowledge the contributions of many, many people, without whose contribution this whole enterprise would not have succeeded. And we must acknowledge them today. I would like to mention, first of all, the contribution of the former directors who played an important leadership role in ushering in the CPP in IIM, Bangalore. Believe me, it wasn't easy at that time, because IIM at that time was trying to plunge itself into the private management thing after being a public systems place before. And so therefore, there was a lot of people who wondered, why should we be doing these things? So anyway, many directors have contributed, but I really wanted to mention those directors with whom I had personal work. And I certainly want to mention K.R.S. Murthy, who set the ball rolling very early. And particularly then M.R. Rao, who was really there throughout the period that I was associated with the CPP. Their contributions were very, very important. M.R. would travel with me, he was deeply committed to it. Many a time we have gone to different forums, including Delhi, this meeting, and M.R. was always there. So I really must, he's no longer with us, but I do remember him and his contribution. Then I would also like to thank the many faculty colleagues who throughout the years have supported the CPP's work and the PGPPM that came. Many of them were management people who actually modified their thing and adapted to the management principles to public policy themes, whether it's in HR, organizational behavior, leadership, finance, strategy. So that was a great thing for all of us. And I'm so glad that they did it and made our program very rich and important, useful. Many of the faculty members who were there at that time, of course, have retired and moved on, but I'm sure in their heart of hearts, they do remember their association with the center. I also want to mention the staff, who, especially in the formative period, the workload was extremely heavy because we had to set the ball rolling. There were many deadlines. There were a lot of paperwork. Because the project it was coming out as a process of funding by multiple organizations. So I must mention at least two people who worked closely with me. There are many others who did it, but I have to mention Leela, who was my secretary for many, many years and really went out of her way to do everything that was required, spending any time of extra time whenever I requested her, she was there. And Rajendra, who fortunately is here today, I think. Rajendra was also very helpful, not directly, but when we launched the center of the phase 4 training program in Mussoorie, Rajendra was like a pillar. So these two people, I remember. There are many other people who were, but I especially want to mention them because my association with the CPP and the time that I worked with them, their role was very, very important. And I must thank them. And many other people from the IIM staff were very, very helpful. For example, library staff, IT staff. I mean, one could go on and on, but must mention that. Then I want to also, of course, mention some people who are not here today, many in large numbers, but without whom this whole exercise would have been very limited. That is the PGPPM students and faculty and alumni. And also the CPP PhD program was launched at the time, and the public policy FPMs also are ones that we should remember today because their contribution, their thing was very important. Actually, the quality of the papers that they did, not only the PhD, in the first round of the PGPVMs, the thesis, the public policy, they would write whatever you used to call it, that thesis, monographs. They would have to, part of their requirement was to produce a project. And those were very high quality because many of them were practitioners in PGPM and even now they're in the library.
Like a mini dissertation.
Like a mini dissertation. Very, very valuable. So their intellectual contribution, the fact that they could bring practice into public policy and were willing to learn from it was something that I must acknowledge. Then, of course, I have to also thank all the past and present chairpersons for their hard work and contributions. Now, apart from individuals, if you ask who played an important role, I have to mention a few institutions who were partners to us and whose role was very crucial in the beginning. I would like to thank, first of all, the donor. The CPP became possible because of very generous contributions from the Government of India through the DOPT and the UNDP. These were the two major funders who actually the CPP project was born out of a large selection project of the Government of India with advertising and competition, and we won the bid. But it was a government project mainly funded by UNDP. Also, the Government of India chipped in for the infrastructure, and they gave a lot. So that has to be acknowledged. I must also acknowledge something else that is very unusual. I myself was surprised that it happened. The government of Karnataka very, very generously gave a block grant without asking any questions, in the sense that it wasn't something you had to do a project for. There were some commitments, but it was a large grant and it helped us. It helped us at a time when our funding became poor. I mean, there is cycles. So we must recognize the contribution of the government of Karnataka. And in particular, I remember the role of the chief secretary of the time, B.K. Bhattacharya, who again is no longer with us. But Bhattacharya was very crucial. Because of his support, we received that fund. So today, when we are thinking back about where CPP has come, of course, the IIMB contributed a lot, but these people's contributions were very, very crucial. And we must remember it today on the 25th anniversary of their thing. I must also acknowledge the initial research funds very generously we got from the Ford Foundation. So they gave a very large grant that got our research part going. So these institutions were very, very important in our beginning, and we must thank them today, remember them and thank them today. I must also mention the partner institutions with whom we worked closely. Long-term partnerships. We had a long-term, and maybe now it's longer there, but a partnership with the Maxwell School of Public Policy, Citizenship and Public Affairs of Syracuse University, who was an important partner in our phase 4 delivery program, but also in the PGPPM, who contributed their visiting faculty and many other activities. So we must thank them. We had a long-standing partnership with them. So that was very good. And also, not in equal measure, but I must also mention the partnership with the LBS, Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, because when we won the separate thing, the phase 4 training program for IAS faculty members, IAS officers, was separate from the PGPPM and Center for Public Policy. That was a 2-month long duration program for the senior IAS officers of the anybody aspiring to be a joint secretary had to go through that program compulsorily. So today, if you look at the top brass of the IAS officers, you can count a large number of them who have been associated with us in some way or the other, have gone through this program. And I'm sure, I mean, as far as they probably also felt that it helped them. We think so, and I think that they also thought so. Anyway, so that was LBS, who was an important partner. Now, in the remaining time, I just want to mention 2 things. If you want to ask the question, I ask myself, how did we succeed? What was the situation? Why were we able to get this thing going at that time? Remember, the work on this started, even though the center was launched in 2000, the work on it started in 1997 or 98. And on a personal note, I will have to say that, very, very personal, when I started working on the CPP, I had a head full of hair. But by that time, we came to phase 4. You can see the result. So it did have an impact on me, let me put it that way. What were the factors? Why did we succeed? I think one important thing is that the CPP's mission was one that resonated with the times. It was an idea whose time had come. And we happened to be there at that time. And what was that idea? And that, as Anil already explained, our goal was to infuse management discipline for transforming public administration. That was the goal. We wanted to change the good old-fashioned bureaucratic mode of functioning into a more modern style of public administration and governance. And that was the mission. And because this idea was something that was resonated with the time, India, of course, became a market reform study in 91. By the mid-90s, people were talking about how to transform the bureaucracy to cope with the globalization and liberalization. And that was the demand for it. And because we happened to be there at that time, and the fact was at that particular period of thinking in public policy, management was thought as the way out. Not only in India, from UK, everywhere in the world, even in the US. If you look at public policy documents, all of them you'll find stressing efficiency management everywhere. So that's a very, very important reason. And especially everybody wanted to improve the senior civil service. So because we did that, it was important. And I think it's very, very important that we succeeded at that time. But anyway, we'll talk about what the government wanted to do. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when you start something like this, you have to have a very strong, committed stakeholders outside. And we had that. We were very fortunate. That was the second success factor. We had a large number of, first of all, we had strong backing from the top, absolutely top of government, because both Prime Minister Vajpayee as well as Manmohan Singh believed in the mission of the center. And they knew about it because they were the ones that sat on top directly of the DOPT, and they backed it to the hilt. Did not hold back. So that was very important. And the other thing, of course, is that we had a very, very strong base of senior and retired civil servants who also felt that this was required. So we got a lot of cooperation from them. Not only cooperation, you see, the IS network is so big that throughout the country, there were large numbers of people. Whenever we said we are doing this, doors would open automatically. So I don't think that it would be possible to do what we did without a kind of a spontaneous backing, not everybody, of course, but a spontaneous backing from a very large subset of senior civil servants who believed this was necessary. So I think that was very crucial. I'm mentioning these things because you will recognize that many of these things are no longer valid. So when we think about the future, we've got to ask, how do we create these conditions? May not be the same conditions, but this is the second factor I wanted to mention. The third factor that I wanted to mention was that we were very careful in trying to ensure, whenever you get money from government and other big funding agencies, the tendency for them to control the content is almost natural. It's it doesn't depend on individuals. But we knew that we could not retain quality, could not deliver quality unless we maintained autonomy. And so we were very, very, very fortunate in being able to create an institutional structure of governance for the CPP, very, very unusual, that actually guaranteed this autonomy. Again, this is an issue that today many people will be facing throughout the country and around the world. Now, what is it that we did to create that autonomy? In a nutshell, I'll tell you what it is. Whenever the government gives money, there is a whole a structure of control. I forget what they call it, steering committee or whatever it is, it's called. But basically, it's where the joint secretary is the boss. And whatever he says, the UNDP will listen, and they can get whatever they want, whoever they want to be hired, etc. All kinds of things. They have no shortage of requests and hopes and desires. So we were able to control that, again, by, I don't know exactly how it happened, but the structure was the following. We created an 11-member program advisory committee that met, I think, 3 months or approximately, met very frequently. And that 11-member committee had 4 people, including myself from IIM, 3 from government, 2 from UNDP, and some external experts. So that 11-member program advisory committee was chaired by the chairman of the board of IIM Bangalore. At that time, the chairman was a man named Sushim Datta, SM Datta. So SM Datta chaired that committee, and including him, there were 11 members, with me as also including that, part of it. And that committee, the board of governors, handed over the powers of its own powers to the program advisory committee to govern them. This is a very, very unusual arrangement, but it happened. And because it happened, and because we're very eminent people from government and everywhere else in this committee, we were able to design the program the way we wanted. Of course, a lot of feedback, etc., but we could do it. And that autonomy was extremely crucial. And again, if you want to maintain quality, you have to have that autonomy. What kind of structures can do it in today's world? You have to think about it. But this is what we succeeded. So this is really what I wanted to say about the success factors. I could say a little bit about the future, but maybe I'll be quiet now. In the next round, when it comes, I'll talk about what I think should be happening in the future.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. I invite Professor Geeta Sen, who's joined us online, to please provide her remarks.
Thanks very much, Anil. Can you tell me if you can hear me?
Yes, I think we will have to increase
Great.
the volume side. I think we'll just.
Does the volume need to go up?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
It is better. Are you able to hear? So, yes. Okay.
Better, but not perfect. Let me increase. My volume is at 100. No.
Okay.
I'm not going to take a whole lot of time speaking to what Professor Charanjit Sen has already addressed, which is the founding drama of the CPP, all the elements that went into it, some of them serendipitous, some of them carefully thought through, some of them completely accidental, and all of them sort of ending up with the CPP's continued existence 25 years later. Let me, however, say that not everything was roses all the way. There were, of course, many challenges. There were differences of opinion. There was the usual tug of war that results when a major enterprise of this type is undertaken by a group of people or by an institution. And not everybody was always happy with the results, but hey, that's life. And that's what institutions and institution building is all about. But what I thought I would talk about today is an issue, and I will speak about 3 dimensions of this issue, which I think were part of the CPP from the beginning. And that's the question of inclusion. What should be included? How should it be included? And who should be included? And I'll just address those. One could ask a few more questions, I suppose, but in the time I have, I'll just talk about those. Let me ask the how question first. The CPP was set up to do public policy analysis. And as Chiranjeev said, it did it through teaching training, it did it through research, it did it through publications and seminars, and so on. But I want to speak about something which in the very early years of the PGPPM program was an issue that the senior IAS, IPS, IFS officers who were part of the students' clientele of that program grappled with very seriously over a number of years. And that was the question, that was the issue of what is it that makes policies work or not work in India? Now, when we began working on this, the standard response to that would be, oh, the policy was great, designed really well, bad implementation. And then bad implementation became this kind of black box or black hole, depending what you want to call it. And you could just say bad implementation and let it go. And our question became, and this was one that in my own tangling with this issue, the presence of those senior bureaucrats was absolutely critical, because they could talk about implementation in a way that no academic could, and in a way that was extremely fruitful in the cross-fertilization between academic thinking and field level policy making thinking. In this, I have to recognize someone who was extremely supportive and valuable and was a visiting faculty member at the CPP for many years. He was a senior IAS officer who had retired at the level of Secretary, Government of India, Dr. Vaidinath Iyer. And he and I together worked on this question of the policy process in India. what actually goes on in the policy making process in India beyond the the usual thing of here's the policy's objectives, here are what it is supposed to result in, and then we say, oh, but it didn't result in that. It resulted in something else altogether that was not intended, that was not intentional. And so the question became really to try and talk about that. So I think one of the contributions of the CPP and thinking in the CPP at that time was in fact going beyond this question of good policy, bad implementation, to look at what makes policies work and what makes them work not quite so well or work differently than one had intended. I won't get into the details and specifics of that, but I would highly recommend for those of you in the audience who have not seen it and are interested, Dr. Vaidyanatha Iyer's book on public policy making in India, which includes a set of cases as well at the end, which were drawn from his own experience with policymaking. A fascinating book for anybody interested in the process of public policymaking in the country. The second question of inclusion, which was very close to my own work and thinking, was who was this public policy for? What should it contain? What should it include? And naturally, in a management school, which had moved beyond its origins as a public systems management school to much more of a focus on the private sector and the functioning of the private sector, it was not surprising that there were very few people who had much to say about such things as health or education or gender equality or social inequality or caste related issues among our faculty. For me, this was an extremely important thing that a school, a Center for Public Policy and its programming and research needed to bring in a much more central way. Because in the end, who's the policy for? Yes, you may say it's surely not for the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats are the ones who are the vehicles through which public policy reaches the public. It's surely partly for the private sector, but not only or exclusively for the private sector. Over and above everything, it's for the people of the country. And for that, unless one can address what are central policy issues that directly address and impinge on the lives of people, why are our education levels where they are? Why does China, starting at about the same period, roughly same independence year, more or less same period of moving into the modern world of globalization, why is China able to zoom ahead and has zoomed ahead on everything from GDP to technology to productivity to being on the front lines of some of the most cutting edge technologies in the world? And it was important for us, therefore, to ask the questions of what is going on in the spheres of education, in the spheres of health, in the spheres of equality, social and economic inequality as well. So that's the second inclusion. I have no idea whether that continues to be part of the CPP and PGPPM's work. And I would certainly think in today's world, it's crucial that if it's not there, it come back. And the third thing that I wanted to speak about, but let me say one other thing about that same point before I move to the third thing. And that's this. Just yesterday was what's called World Population Day. And in many countries all over, there are commemorations of World Population Day. I was speaking at a seminar organized by the Chinese Population and Development Research Center in hybrid mode, along with the UN Population Fund and a group of others. And I thought I would hear Chinese bureaucracy speaking. To my surprise, I was stunned at how, on a question that is really cutting edge in the population field, how far thinking and ahead they were. The question is the question of low fertility in today's world. And I would take a bet that in most institutions in this country, let alone policymakers, if you were to ask about the challenges of low fertility, you would not get much of an answer. In fact, they would still be talking vaguely to you about demographic dividends and the need to bring down the rate of population growth. They would not be aware that, in fact, by and large, not everybody, let me not tar everyone with the same brush, but by and large, there would not be general understanding that, in fact, for the country as a whole, the so-called total fertility rate is actually at and even slightly below replacement level at this point. Our problem is not primarily now one of booming population. Our problem is one of figuring out what to do about aging and low fertility. And I think that unless we seriously address questions of this type, these are going to be the big public policy questions globally in the upcoming years. We will tend to get left behind. And let me very quickly just speak about the third inclusion that I think is important. The third one is who is in this program. Now, I know that, and I confess I haven't kept up to date on that. It began as bureaucrats, and then, of course, it's moved to become, PGPPM is certainly a much more open program now, with many other groups coming in. I think the question I would ask, and as I said, this is simply my own lack of keeping up with what CPP and PGPPM are doing. One of the very important things is the cross-fertilization that needs to happen between senior and middle levels of the bureaucracy and people from other walks of life in the country. Sitting in parallel in the classroom, doing your own thing, is not going to do the trick, because there is a great deal that can be learned through this cross-fertilization that's extremely important and valuable. So with that, let me stop. Let me congratulate everybody all the chairpersons present and not present who have been involved in the continued activism of the CPP in the field of public policy, and wish everybody a bright and continuing future as you and all of us go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll invite Professor Rajiv Gowda. Professor Gopal Naik will come in there. He's currently the chair. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's such a pleasure to see an institution reach its silver jubilee. And particularly grateful to Chiranjeev and Geeta Sen, who were put in a tremendous amount of effort. And I was one of the first beneficiaries. I joined in December 2000, and the CPP already existed. And my PhD is in public policy and management from Wharton. And so, in that sense, it seemed like a very seamless move into a wonderful home. And there were two dimensions that were interesting. One was this opportunity to teach the emerging leaders of the bureaucracy because in some ways the original compact to which set up the CPP was that this organization would train the senior levels of India's bureaucracy. So instead of sending them abroad, where the government of India could finance maybe 5 people in Harvard or something like that, here they were able to do 30, 40. And in the process, we had some extremely good students. Even today, some of the secretaries to the government of India are our graduates. The chief of the CBI is our graduate. Things like that. These are. It gave us an opportunity to engage with them and feel like we are building, contributing to the emerging leadership of India's governance from the executive side. This, of course, also turned out to be our, a bit of a Trojan horse problem because, we were so dependent on just this one source of students that if the government didn't act fast enough, some students wouldn't be able to come and join us. And, and then they changed their policy. They started sending people back abroad. So then you had, you had students from services which I did not know existed, and which is fine. They're all seniors and from the civil services, all that. But basically, between this and the training that we did in Missouri, actually gave us a chance to engage with a large number of officers, and I think that was a very good, mutually beneficial interaction. Now, when I took over as chair, so I have a political interest. And so my agenda was like, why are we restricting all this policy knowledge only to bureaucrats? Why not engage with the political class? So one of the first workshops that we did in that context was a partnership with PRS Legislative Research, where they brought in MLAs from around the country for a workshop out here. Now, there was a lot of apprehension and concern because everyone's worried about, how are we politicians going to behave wherever. And but these were all reasonably self-selected individuals who were very keen on engaging and learning more. And I think we had a wonderful time. And a year later, Sridhar Pabishetty is here, who was my chief operating officer. And we decided that, instead of waiting for women's reservation, that we could, if we can teach business, you can teach public policy, then you can also teach politics. And we thought, let's do an experiment. And we launched a program called India Women in Leadership. And this one was focused on emerging women politicians. Basically, we said, look, why wait for reservation? Why don't we teach you to outcompete men? Okay. Not one of them has been a corporator in Delhi. Some of them have contested elections. Some of them have been prominent nationally, but none of them of our graduates, we only had 28 in the first batch, first and only batch, actually have risen to any higher levels as of yet. We'll see. But it was a fascinating exercise in creating a curriculum which not just focused on policy, but also on politics, on, what shall we say, on personal development, and on what we call perspective, which was the gender perspective on life in India. So it was a fascinating thing with a variety of guest speakers, etc. We had to do this under overcome a lot of opposition from within the system, because as I said, there's a lot of suspicion of politicians and wariness. Let me not use that word, wariness about politicians and what you're doing here, and not an expansive vision of what if our aim is to enhance public policy capacity, then why hesitate from, engaging with, if you go to the Kennedy School, at Harvard, you'll find that there are many people who go on to become members of Congress or senators, right? Those sorts of possibilities are there. Anyway, that was one thing. One other thing that we tried to do a little bit more of was engage with one of our benefactors, the government of Karnataka. And that had some interesting, aspects. So, for example, Sridhar was our representative working with the current Chief Secretary, Dr. Shalini Rajneesh, on a program called what's now called Sakala. This was about delivering government services within a fixed time, within a guaranteed period of time, right? And so we helped make that program come alive. And so in that sense, I feel very happy that an administrative reform of such a practical, impact was that we had a role to play in that. But there was another program where we were asked to join hands to prepare a report on the state of Karnataka's environment. And we signed a contract which had a line which said, we will attend as many meetings as may be necessary, or things like that. And then we encountered that the IAS officer in charge of this program would look at not just us, right? I mean, you had people like Madhav Gadgil and some very serious scholars working on this report. And she would look at the report, the drafts, and say, "Oh, I'm not happy. Come back next week. Let's have one more meeting." And for people who are scholars and essentially were expecting a certain amount of dialogue rather than to being dictated to, this really made the experience a little bit of a bitter one. Ultimately, it all got sorted out and it's behind us. But that sort of, made us less willing to go and do more. And this is an interesting challenge even going forward, because if you actually go to the government, I served, not when I was an MP, but just before when our new government took over in Karnataka, for the first year, I was vice chairman of the planning commission, right? And there's a cabinet rank job. I got to see what's going on. Well, a lot of government work is being outsourced to the public policy divisions of the big four, big six, whatever consulting firms, right? And they'll come out and write a report saying Karnataka, $1 trillion economy by 2030, whatever. Right? So there's obviously a lot of demand from within the government for management perspectives and things like that. And certainly we haven't grown enough to fill that gap. Okay. Here I must mention something which maybe Gopal will also remember. There was a period of time when we had our own separate account, and we put in a lot of effort to enhance the corpus. Okay. And then one day, the then director said, "Why are you having two separate accounts? These crores that we had accumulated," he said, no, you can't have it. And it all just disappeared into the institute account. While our aim was that once we have a substantial corpus, we'd be able to hire more practitioners, build a larger team, have more impact. And instead, what's happened is we are now as vulnerable to the larger institutes, preferences. And since it's a management school, we are certainly not at the top of the institute's priorities. And so that, in some ways, I credit that with having stifled our growth at a very crucial time when there was much more that we could possibly have done. But overall, when you think about the match and mismatch, right? There are many of our colleagues Professor Geeta Sen in the world of health policy, Arnav also in that domain. We had Professor Gopal Naik in education and agriculture. Professor Sriram working with microfinance and cooperatives. So in their own capacity, they were able to take their domains and do a lot more with the outside world. But otherwise, one of the challenges, is that IIM is such a beautiful campus that people don't like to step out and engage with the world outside. And as a result, the kind of opportunity, the thirst out there for people, faculty to engage, and we're not meeting that demand. And, so that's one of the serious challenges over time. But there's another reason why meeting that demand is a little difficult. Because if you go back to the public systems, this is before my time, I only joined in 2000, but the original agenda, the mission of IIM Bangalore was to work with what was called public systems, with the public sector. And then over time, it was discovered that there's a mismatch between graduation with this degree and the hiring processes of the public sector, etc. And most people wanted to go work in the private sector anyway. So over time, that phased out. But in those days, they used to do a lot of government consulting. And I remember, my economics chair, Professor Ranganathan, was, I came here as an associate professor and I wanted to ask him about when am I going to be promoted to full professor? And I showed him some of these reports that we had written for the government. And he said, none of these are peer-reviewed journal articles. You better go get some of them done. And so that is a very challenging situation for you want to do policy work, relevant work, impactful work, but unless you can turn them into journal articles, which are in journals that are recognized by the institute in some way or respected by the institute in some other way, then the pathways to promotion and institutional respect in some ways, those become tricky. So I would say that dilemma, what we are supposed to do as professors, where we publish, and what the outside world of practical policy needs, that mismatch unless we overcome that. And one way to overcome that is to earn your tenure and afterwards do whatever you want. But basically, it's a tricky balancing act because every year your contributions are assessed. And there we used to find that the policy domain faces some challenges. We have a large number of journals which are appropriate, given if you're doing a paper on health policy, you will find some journal which is appropriate for health policy. And, but the Institute's wisdom, there are only so many A journals and B journals, etc. And most of our publications, including EPW, don't even fit in that category, right? And so, what shall we say? In that process, I think we are at an institutional disadvantage compared to our more mathematical colleagues. And then, depending on the kinds of topics you take up, you may or may not even find resonance and things of that sort. Anyway, so those things continue to be there. And unless we can figure out a way to bring in more people on a temporary basis to, or even professors of practice and engage with the real world a little bit more, it might be tricky. And even there, there's always a lot of demand from retiring IAS officers to come here as a happy second home at IAS officers. No, just joking. Just kidding. Anyway, the point is, I'm just saying that we have to be careful because you have to find the ones who are academically inclined and can contribute, etc. But otherwise, it's been a fascinating experiment. I do think that if you take some time off and introspect, those of you who are still here, you might start thinking about how to strengthen and and be more impactful going forward. Shall I stop there?
Thank you. So I'll invite Arnab, Professor Arnab Mukherjee.
Thanks, Anil. So, uh, so I remember a time when I was looking for a job, and I didn't know where to apply for jobs. And I was finishing a PhD in public policy, and I applied here. And I interviewed at a bunch of different places. And the really nice thing that I found about Center for Public Policy when I was a candidate looking for a job as a faculty member was the sense of openness that existed both within the center in terms of looking at what people wanted to do. And I think some of the philosophical sort of settings through which both, Professor Sen, Chiranjeev Sen, Professor Geeta Sen, sort of laid out some of the openness with which this was being looked at as a center was really important in that space. But even in the naming of the center, we're not the Center for Public Policy on Health, or the Center for Urban Governance, or the Center for anything else. We're the Center for Public Policy, which is the focus is on the policy. And I think in this sense, that has allowed us to have a reasonable amount of diversity in terms of the kind of research and the context within which people have been working within the same center, where there is some overlap that many of us have in many shades, particularly in lives that we lead as researchers, or as more frequently, the overlaps are much higher when we think of ourselves as educators teaching in different types of programs, the MBA program, the PhD program, and of course the program closest to most CPP faculty members, which is the postgraduate program in public policy and management. It sort of gives us a lot of commonality as well as a little bit of distance in terms of how we have existed. So it's in this sense that I think the center has been able to reposition, reimagine itself in many ways in different settings. That's often very hard to do. So in this sense, if you sort of, when I look back, I find that at almost every stage, while there were things that were challenging us, while there were things which were difficult, there was always something or the other that we seem to be doing right. And I think it's in this sense, the continuity of CPP today, 25 years down the road, while surprising at a personal level, I think it's reflective of, the significant amount of goodwill that I think the center has received in the institute, outside the institute, amongst our student body, as well as in the larger public policy space, which has always sort of, from time to time, even though, as Rajiv mentioned, we don't like to leave the campus, but has come knocking at our door to essentially say, will you be sort of useful? So in the allotted time, and to sort of, counterpoise against some of the comments raised, I'll sort of limit myself to a couple of things where CPP was doing things that it was perhaps not designed to do. And in that kind of a space, I think the one thing that Professor Sriram just reminded me of, and which helps build a little bit of continuity with what Professor Rajiv was talking about, is I think sometime around 2017, 2018, a little later, further down the road, IIM Bangalore sort of ended up doing like a series of 12 consultations with different departments to talk about innovation in the government space. So we created what was called the Karnataka Innovation Report, which essentially was very surprising at multiple levels. Number one, it was very surprising to me that IMB, sitting in South Bangalore, far away from the city, could even invite 16 departments of the government to come in and talk. Not only did they come in and talk, they came in and talked about like all the new policies, new imaginative things that were going on, and the way that this was shaping the possibility of the future. As an academic exercise, this was fantastic. We would routinely meet up in the PGPPM classroom, which was, now, I guess, it's moved from C cluster to, Q cluster, it's Q101. And so for many people, that classroom actually has meaning. Q101 has meaning as a classroom that people would convene in. And we did like these series of meetings from which we sort of culled out all the different ways that entrepreneurial activity is happening within the state. Uh, pushed back, a little bit further, 2018, 2019, I had just come out as CPP chair. I started getting phone calls from the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. And, there was someone there who was an alum of the institute, who was currently the secretary at that point in time. And he was aware of what IMB could do. And we also had other alums in the department who felt that, the institute could play a catalytic role in terms of designing a program which would try to identify people who could work with the district collector's office. And so to begin with, in 2020, about 7 days before COVID was announced, and while we still had students in the institute, we started the Mahatma Gandhi National Fellowship Program, which enables students to be identified right after their undergraduate program, be in the age of 21 to 30, and who could and would be willing to work in the local language in the offices of the district collector of initially 75 districts. And later on, it became like 660 districts of India. So this entire program, which scaled from IMD's catalytic creation of this program, which needless to say, I mean, where would my experience come from? My experience came from the postgraduate program in public policy and management, which we had sort of curated at that point in time about for 15 years. And we used that to create a 40-day program with a 2-year sort of design, wherein there would be mentoring by IM faculty when students were in the field. And picking up on the idea of the mini dissertation, we also had like a district, growth and skill development plan that they would write at the end of the 2 years, which the 2-year mentorship model would try to push you towards writing. In this way, I think we have sort of looked at a number of different strategies for trying to scale our activities, to try to create outreach. And many of these things have led to a lot of really interesting relationships. So, for example, today, if I look back, the Mahatma Gandhi National Fellowship Program is no longer in place. It was funded by the ministry based on some funds from the World Bank. The World Bank funds have dried up. However, we seem to have created a model. The second cohort had 9 IMs participate. So we were one of 9. While we did the common admissions through IM Bangalore, we provided the overall design, we pushed and we suddenly were being sort of identified in different district offices as the place where a lot of things were being shaped. It is no longer in action, and I realized we had finally hit success because there were YouTube videos which were sort of being created on how to crack the MGNF admissions exam. So when that happens, you know that you have really achieved something. But today, when we look back at this experience, I think there is a lot of interest and a lot of difficulty as well in reigniting this kind of work. It turns out that money, and this is an expensive program to run, is not the major barrier for us. The real barrier for us is how do we actually work with each of the districts across the country when there is no overarching mandate. And so there is this difficulty in this space that while you routinely meet success, you also routinely meet failure. And that continuity between success to the next success sort of gets stymied by the nature of the public policy space, which is partly political, partly driven by need for change, partly responding to crisis, and never the same over time. One place where this lack of similarity sort of is, I think, perfectly visible is in the design of the postgraduate program in public policy and management. This is a program that's been run at inception and in design as a 2-year program. Briefly, it became a 1-year program, then it became a 2-year program. And at each of these instances, we've had interventions from DOPT responding to different kinds of perceptions, different kinds of requirements, different kinds of utilization sort of norms of officers' times. And when COVID happened, we were running essentially a one-year model in which people would come in and they would, within the context of that one-year program, try and write a mini dissertation. So right now I'm the chair of this program, and this program, once we hit COVID, had to go online. And once it went online, the government scratched its head and said, "Oh, we can do this online as well." And so right now we're running a 14-month hybrid program in which there's one term on campus, everything else is online. We've stretched the idea of the mini dissertation. The mini dissertation is still a part of this program, but participants, government officers who come in through the program are now expected to do a couple of additional things. They're expected to write a case study based on a public sector organization or a public sector initiative that one of our colleagues who sort of writes case studies is mentoring. We do like an immersion in the field. So last year we went to Chamarajanagar, into BR Hills, to essentially understand how tribal communities look at public service delivery. We also went into schools thanks to some of our relationships through Professor Gopal Naik's office in the education space. And so, what is happening is that the center itself is growing in different ways. And the program has essentially picked up on many of these kinds of different activities towards sort of pushing forward how some of these things are going forward. One of the ways that this program has also changed is while we were created at a point in time when officers were not permitted to go abroad, and then they started going abroad, we are back in a space where officers are not permitted to go abroad. And so we have no funding to maintain relationships with like long-standing partners like Syracuse universities, but we've repositioned to try and create like a global policy week on campus. So we're essentially trying to work with different countries' consular offices to see if we can create a long-standing relationship within the institute as a part of our sort of program. And so this is a place which is in constant flux. And that's very hard to actually deal with in a world in which one is also expected to write research papers, maintain steady sort of tempo of classes, and also respond to crises that are happening from village and taluka all the way down to the national level, with people sort of coming in at all the time. But we have sort of been around for 25 years. I think, yesterday I was shocked to learn that the principal secretary to the Prime Minister has also done a program at IIM Bangalore. So, so many of these things are things that, we ourselves don't really know what we have really done. We just keep doing them without trying to track them. So I think like this kind of a forum is very nice. I do hope that we don't wait for another 25 years to start reflecting on, CPP and what CPP can do and should do. There's a lot of really nice things, and I think there's a lot of positivity within which I think many of these things have been achieved. And so I think, I hope that will continue. So with that,
thank you. Thank you. Invite Dr. Sriram.
Thank you, Anil. I'll try and be as brief because I think first round itself was exceeding our time. So I don't know whether we have time for the second round, but let's see. So I took over the chair of CPP and COVID happened. So my tenure was the most insipid term. No action. The entire conference was conducted in the CPP chair's office, completely online. I think I'm surprised that none of my colleagues mentioned the CPP conference, which has been one of the big flagship programs of the Center for Public Policy. We're getting into the 20th year of the conference this year. I think we'll do a reflection during the conference, I hope, about how good the conference has been. That's one thing which did not stop even during COVID. All the 3 years, 2 years of online, and then we continued on with the offline. We continued with our sponsors. We kept in touch with all our funders, all our researchers, papers, everything. I mean, nothing stopped, and it went according to the pre-specified dates, even though it was not there. So that's something that we should be proud of. Rajiv did mention about the challenges of being a public policy department or a center in a business school, and that's a challenge that we constantly face, particularly with the programs that we'd like to do, which possibly need an alternative pricing. I don't know whether the corpus would have helped us to do that or not, because we were talking about it. We had a retreat 2 years ago, spent a day looking at what we had done, what we could do. And one of the things that one of our senior fellows said, is there something that the department can do which the institute cannot? Are you bound by the norms of the institute, audit, utilization, HR policies, and so on? So that's something that we grappled with during that time, and I think, in a way, as a step towards that, and I hope Gopal will talk about it as we go along. When Gopal took over as CPP chair, we decoupled the public policy area and the Center for Public Policy. So the academic part is now no longer a part of CPP. Hopefully, the CPP will emerge as a independent center with its own staffing, with its own HR policies, and eventually as a Section 8 company or something like that. We're still far away from achieving that, but we've taken the first step towards that. So in a way, we are trying to address the issue of autonomy as well as the issue of the constraints being within a business school, and still trying to grapple with it. Essentially because the type of, you're absolutely right, the type of assignments or the type of engagements that we get is not suitable to promotions and research incentives and things like that. These are things that need much more of action and many more meetings. So that's something that we need to remember. Two other things I'd like to flag, and I'll stop. One is during the COVID, what we did was we said, look, since everybody is online, there is no constraint for us, including budgetary constraint. So we then tried to get the best in the world to come and talk. So in a way, that was an era. For 2 years, we would just do cold calls with speakers, and about 60-70% of the time we would get speakers. We got people like Michael Sandel to come and talk to us online. So that's something that we did during COVID. I mean, in fact, I think and then one more thing which we need to flag is when Hema was the chair, she started the Foundation Day lecture, and that has been going on for 7 years now, uninterrupted. On July 10th, every year, we have a Foundation Day lecture. This time, because of the importance of the position that the speaker holds, it was advanced by a day. Otherwise, it would have been held on 10th of July. So we've got very good speakers over a period of time. So some of these activities which a chair has started, only thing that we have not continued, Rajiv, is we don't have a monthly meeting with pizzas, which you had started, which stopped with you. I think it was a good thing. Somehow we have not been able to keep tempo with that. The last thing that I'd like to indicate, and this is nothing to do with CPP per se as a department as of now, but it's something to do with the legacy that has been built from Chiranjeev onwards. In the sense that whenever there is any government that thinks that they need to engage with public policy reform, engagement, we seem to be a port of call, right? And when the Administrative Reforms Commission of Karnataka was set up, KRC2 was set up, Mr. Vijay Bhaskar came to CPP and said, I want you to do multiple assignments. And this was not restricted to CPP. It was done by multiple people. Dalia did some work regarding government department service delivery. Vasanthi did something regarding compensation and HR systems. Me and Anil did assignment on parastatals. All this was, we were actually dragged into it in a sense that we said, oh, teaching commitments, this, that, the usual considerations. But because of the connections that the legacy had left with us, there was so much of persuasion that we had to do it. So that's something that has been built up over multiple years of engagement with chairmen like chairpersons like Chiranjeev, Geeta, Rajiv, Gopal, Ramesh, and others. The engagement particularly, and this is one very interesting thing because I spent 10 years in IIM Ahmedabad. IIM Ahmedabad has almost zero connection to the government of Gujarat. Whereas we have a regular conversation with government of Karnataka going on. So that's the most important. We have not only a national and an international institute, we are also a Bangalore institute. We are relevant to the government of Karnataka. I think that's something that the legacy is built over a period of time. The last thing that I would say is we tried to do using COVID and online, we tried to do a general management program in public policy, saying that mid-career, can we do something like a EGMP? We designed the program, we launched it as well, but it just didn't take off essentially because the pricing was on par with the institute, and a lot of people whom we talked to in the government said, if the pricing was something else, you'd have got a good this thing. Well, just to close the loop, good deeds always come back to help us. We implemented that program in a specific context of a telecom department, a program where the Department of Telecom wanted their officers to come and spend time. We used exactly the same design, more or less, to deliver it to the telecom department. So therefore, when they came, we had a ready template. In one sense, even being within the constraint of the management school, there's somebody else who's able to pay the bill. And that was again, thanks to one of our graduates and alums. So we have a huge network built in. And I think that's what is carrying us all on, not the current or the previous CPP chairs enterprise. It is the enterprise of the earlier chairs that the legacy that we are carrying on. Thanks a lot, Chiranjeev. Thanks, Geeta. Thanks, Gopal, Rajiv, Ramesh, Hema, Arnab.
Thank you. Thank you, Sriram. May I request Professor Gopal Naik like to share? So you are on mute.
He gets double attack because
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So thank you so much. I think it's so good to hear all of you sharing your experiences. Because when I became chair, most of the things were set thanks to Chiranjeev and Geeta. When one of the challenging thing was to make sure that the PGPPM program works well. I think initial 2 years were really challenging. A lot of things needs to be sorted out, not only the facility, but also sort of mindset changes. The kind of requirements they were asking for and what we can provide, their ability to adjust to the academic institutions is something we had to deal with. I think most of it was actually done by Professor Nagdevara and Professor Jose, who actually ended the PGPPM program at that time. Again, thanks to Chiranjeev and Professor Geeta Sen, who actually came up with a wonderful structure for the Phase 4 program. Phase 4 program, I'm mentioning it because this was one of the most challenging ones. The government was thinking about Kennedy School and, of course, the IMA and Kennedy School offering programs. And we were there with Syracuse as one of the bidders. And they gave us the Phase 4. And it was important. In fact, Phase 4 is the most important in the sense that I think the people who go through this program will become the joint secretaries and the additional secretaries and so on. And therefore, it was one of the most challenging. So that structure, which was actually sort of developed by Professor Geeta Sen, was a wonderful one. It went off quite well, though there were lots of hitches in terms of offering the program. But at the end of it, and when we were sitting, to hear the review of the program, I remember Mr. Yugandhar was the chair of the review committee, and we were just so tense, what he is going to say. And then at the end of it, he was very pleased that the program went off well. And that was so good to hear, for us. And in fact, that sort of set the ball rolling for us, in the sense that after that, many ministries, departments would come to us and say, can you offer this program for us? Something like Phase 4 program that we have offered for IS programs and so on. So many departments, revenue, forest, and other departments came to us and asked us for offering such programs. So that was one thing. And again, I think we should recognize that our efforts have been very useful in basically conveying that such programs help the capacity building, can help capacity building of government officers. They are useful, and even today they are continuing. Phase 4 kind of programs are continuing. We may not be doing much, but they have been there. And in fact, a number of other departments come to us now to offer such a program and so on. So I would consider that as a successful program. Our PGPPM is, of course, whenever we meet our alumni, there is always a good word from them that this was a wonderful program. In fact, when it was stopped for 2 years, many of them expressed, their concern that such a good program should not have been stopped and so on. But at the same time, it was also not growing, and because of various reasons like government facilitating officers to go abroad and so on, and also our fees. I think, as Professor Sriram rightly pointed out, price point is a major issue for the public policy education outreach programs. So that has become a major constraint. Otherwise, I think we would have probably had more than 100 candidates, at least in each batch. I think we had sort of targets to reach 60 and then maybe go into multiple sections and so on, but that sort of could not be realized, mainly because of the price points. I think if you keep the prices sufficiently low and open it up, and I'm sure there will be many candidates would like to apply for this program. Then, of course, especially when during that time, we were also able to offer programs for, as Rajiv said, to MLAs. In fact, we had an MLA orientation program on our campus for 3 days. 108 MLAs actually were with us for 3 days, and at the end of it, they said it's a wonderful program. Of course, later on when some of them when I met, of course, they recognize this program, but not necessarily follow the program, I guess. But that's a different question. That's also a challenge for us in the sense that how do we, do we do enough to change the mindset of people? And I think that's where the new PGPPM program also, I think, a little challenging in the sense that when they were here for 1 full year, there are a lot of change in mindsets. I think how to really, look at others' perspectives, maybe, NGO perspectives and, academic perspective and so on. It was much better recognized at that time than now. In fact, we also had started a policy lab in the sense that we went to rural area. We adopted 15 gram panchayats for 2.5 years. We did number of experiments, essentially trying to see to what extent we can deliver the services, government services, public services better. For 2.5 years, we were there day in and day out. And we found that it is not very difficult. It's only the systems make it more difficult to deliver services, rather than if you really utilize the technology available, the ideas people have and so on, if you are able to harness their energy, I think it's not difficult to deliver good public service in the country. So that was one learning experience. Of course, taking that forward has been always a difficult one because the way the system actually works. So I think some of the challenges that we face right now is one is of course scale. The size of the center itself. Um, of course, we can always take help of others in the institute. That's always there. They have been very helpful. The other faculty members from the institute. But again, I think people who do core research on public policy, the size should definitely increase. The second thing is the price points, as Sriram and Rajiv has mentioned about. How do we really set the fees such a way that it is affordable for many candidates to come and participate in our program. So we have been doing the conference. It all started with again the PGPPM programs, the dissertations. We started initially with the workshops. We called, in fact, the senior officers from the relevant departments and make our students to present, and many of them appreciated those. And then we have slowly developed it into a full scale conference. So those are some things. I think challenges remain. Challenges also in terms of having people support system, because a lot of things cannot be done through faculty time. I think it has to be done with support staff. I think we need to have a very active support system in order to make sure that the research is taken forward. I think when it is published in a journal and so on, can we take that to the next level, converting that into more common language and share it with the concerned departments and make it useful, or whether it can be incorporated in policies. I think that those links are still to be established and strengthened. While individuals' research has been recognized and they have been, of course, involved in many committees, high-level committees, and so on. But I think as a center, we really need to take some of our collective efforts and make it more impactful for the government. So these are some observations. So maybe I will leave it to Anil for
Thank
the
you.
second round.
Thank you, Professor. So would like to take this occasion to say that we have Professor G. Raghuram, who was former director at IIM Bangalore and was part of Center for Public Policy. And he was with IIM Ahmedabad earlier and working on public policy as well. We also have Mr. N. Ravi, who's a retired Indian Foreign Service officer who was with us, who continues to help us, support us on many aspects after his retirement. He was also the MBA grad of IIM Bangalore, a gold medalist as well. You'll see his name on the board. So, thank you. Yeah, Sridhar Pavishetty, who was the COO, perhaps the first COO of Center for Public Policy. No, not the first, but the most impactful. But yeah, so again, I think, I mean, in some sense, I must say I've kept some headings that we had received as part of the, some of them had already mentioned a few things, but amidst all the remarks made by the chairs, I think many of those things have kind of been addressed, certainly not resolved, but surely there are aspects that we need to look at. In the interest of time, we have already kind of run out of time, but is there anybody in the audience who would like to, we have also, I think, people from different institutions who are here. There are people who are working in public policy space. In fact, yesterday I met a few people which even I didn't realize that those are spaces that have now emerged as people who are practicing in public policy professional space, and maybe that means CPP has even greater responsibility to kind of enable that space. So I'm sure I do see faces who were there yesterday also here. So any quick questions? I also have Professor Arpit Shah, who's currently with CPP, and I think Professor Deepak is also here. Professor Rajlakshmi is here. Of course, we are part of the CPP today, and yeah. So any quick thoughts? Yes, please. We'll go ahead, and I'll come to you in a short while. Yeah.
No,
A quick
yes,
name
please.
and
Please, sir.
introduction as well. and you-
My name is Jay Bhatt. I am a PhD scholar at National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, studying in psychiatric social. So my question is, sir, because I have observed working of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, there are convergence on the field of substance abuse eradication. So the Bay Narcotic Control Bureau and this Banarasi declaration they are going to hold in 18th of this month for youth of 100 more spiritual organizations. So my question straight away is, those are also department and ministries are working on various level, and the PhD researcher are working on those field in our institute, other institute also prominence. So is there like Center of Public Policy along with us or independently have planned to empower us, because a lot of these because conference of AI happened by Ministry of Social Justice in Bangalore, and I have not seen any of the I am Bangalore faculty participating. There were persons, so that is my one thing. Like I like expect.
We'll hand over the mic to Rena. Just take a couple of questions, and we'll have Go ahead.
I'm Prasanna Hegde. I'm from Dayanand Sagar University. So yesterday, Dr. P.K. Mishra talked on disaster management. So my question is based on that. So in India, a corporate sector involvement in disaster management is very low as compared to foreign countries like USA, where there is a FEMA which mandates the corporate participation. But in India, what happens is companies will proactive and cooperate with each other when it comes to their own, if there is a supply chain disaster. But when it comes to national disaster resilience, they remain passive. So do you think there should be some major changes in public policy or like amendments in CSR law to make involvement more
in industry,
industry and corporate involvement?
Okay, good point. Anybody from this side? The thing? Yes.
My question to especially Rajiv Gowda sir. Your government is in Karnataka. Our government started free bus ride services to women. Or I think if you are providing free services to up to class 12th, that is good also. And other things, sir, what is there are not so more buses at the especially working time. So we people are facing a lot of problem. So you
give free tickets and free buses.
Yeah, but people are facing problem also. So need to, because you are part of a government, so think.
Good. Thank you. We also have many students from the Adarsha Institute of Management. Anybody, any of you? Well, please prepare. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Very good morning. Good evening to everybody. I'm Smita Nadiga from Jyoti Institute of Commerce and Management, representing the college here. I am, trying to ask the jury members here, as people are talking about the uni-language, issue. Could you please throw some note on it? I feel the language, if you have a barrier on, the whole chain of language will be, gets cut. So please, I want you to discuss about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last question? And I'll maybe more as a summing up, we can have some of you as well. Any? Okay. So I think if I see, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So like sir already discussed about like making REAP of the CPP, right? Like most of the government works are now outsourced, consulting works to the big four companies. So in future, are we looking upon to reap that benefit to CPP, like selling our research reports to the government or to private organizations?
Okay. So I think if I may, sorry to intermediate, but if I may say, in a way, a personal question is CPP is not visible. We are in public policy, but we are not visible. We are not visible in media. We are not visible in conferences. We are not, though, yes, as faculty, we do a lot of work and participate. But as a collective unit, we are not visible. We are not taking stances on certain public policy concerns like what was raised, this thing. So one is that part. And the other is being academics and being part of CPP. Is that too much of a drag? In a way, I think, I mean, all of you have touched upon it, but maybe that's our biggest strength. Maybe that's also kind of a drawback for us. So on that note, let me invite maybe Professor Rajiv, you want to, yeah, I mean, just, yes, I think the questions.
Yeah, the point you just raised is a very valid one. So that's why, for example, Sridhar came in as the chief operating officer. He's an alumnus of IMB. And he was able to do the engagement with the administrative reforms department, help implement many things, because the academic personnel are, between the teaching and the research and the publication, we're already stretched thin, but there's so much more to do. And on this issue about have we made an impact or not? I mean, it's these are all tricky issues, right? So, for example, Deepak, who is here, has managed to put the issue of caste and underrepresentation in institutions of higher learning on the agenda, and it's not non-controversial. It's something that the larger institutions are not too happy with, but that's the point, right? What do you take up? How do you have an impact? How does the outside world engage with you when you do that? But where there are so few of us, and there's so many subjects in public policy, what you need is a whole school and specialists drawn from so many different specializations. And otherwise, when we stick to breadth, we trade off that depth and the capability. The other thing that we don't do enough of, which some think tanks like Takshashila do, is engage in writing more opinion articles. And a lot of policy discourse in India is in the opinion pages, right? While ours are in journal articles which appear 2 years later after the issue has passed. So that is one of the challenges, right? But I'm just mentioning these things because it's not easy, given our size, our diverse pulls and pressures, and the fact that we're also part of the institution's executive education and fundraising agendas, right? We're also spending a certain amount of time on administration, on EEP programs, which help the institutions tremendously. With regard to the Shakti program, free rides, bus rides to women, the philosophy behind that is that women have been restricted from searching for jobs or pursuing education as a result of that extra cost of transportation. Okay, that if you take that away, it frees them up to expand their search areas for employment, to certainly go to places of education, all that sort of thing. And the other side effect has been that it seems to have got groups of women to go on pilgrimages and things like that, which is also a good thing. These are people who would otherwise only be stuck at home. So basically, it's an empowering gesture. It costs us some amount, but in the process, strangely, since a lot of men travel with family members who are women, the ridership has not dramatically fallen or anything. I think it's actually gone up, which means that there's some positive revenue inflows as well. What were there any other questions that?
Of course, the consulting work.
That requires a large number of people. You need a whole establishment, and and people who would actually engage with government and execute. And as I mentioned, there's a cultural mismatch. Faculty members we are here motivated to do research that we are excited about, and rather than what we are being asked to do, or more often dictated to do, ordered to do. That is not something that we are willing to go with, right? So there's a power nuance there that client orientation, whatever you want to call it, yes, because as I mentioned in that one particular case, where the officer would keep saying, come back next week with a new draft. Like, what the hell? What are you talking about? This is seriously good stuff. And that too for super respected scholars. And anyway, so there is a challenge in how we do these things.
Just to let you know, we don't want to come in the way of the consultants are the one who hire from our students. So
there you go.
Certainly we don't want to compete with.
Right. Yeah. But then in the years since, we have seen the mushrooming of a whole bunch of other public policy schools. And in that landscape, one of the things to reflect on is where are we? Right? There are schools which have large numbers of students, possibly more impact or engagement with government, etc. We're comfortable, but are we? Could we do more? That's really the challenge for the next 25 years.
Great. So all of you here, as well as those of you who are online and who are viewing us on YouTube, I think we will draw close to the Silver Jubilee celebrations of the CPP. I would like to, first of all, thank our staff members, Ms. Shashikala and Ms. Kavita. They are the people who have organized everything since the last 2 days, as well as many other departments of IIM Bangalore who have come together to enable this, as well as the technology, communication, reporting, and a whole lot of facilities. So thank you, all of you. And I thank all of you being here. Please join us for some coffee and tea as well. And, okay. So there will be mementos that I would hand over to the people who are here and those who will. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rajiv. Very, yeah. Thank you. Oh, that one. Photo. No, no, I'm going to get more. No. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.